Okay, let's begin. Just want to, today being our last class for this year, I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you all about some instructions for the model exam and the final exam, and also some other aspects. And then, if we have time, we'll do a short lesson as a motivation for you. Um, And then if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask, not just about, the exam and all that, but even if you have other questions about the Bible, you're welcome to ask. Okay. So as you know, you'll have your model exam from the 4th onwards. And we have actually just for your batch, we have spaced out the model exam all the way up to the 25th of January. So you're going to have 1 or 2 days break in between so that you can actually write these model exams very well. And we want you to really do well, in these model exams because they are the preparation for the final. And these model exams are going to be proctored. That means all of you should have a webcam and a microphone if required, so that we can see you on the webcam. Okay, so all of you all must have a working camera on your laptop. If it is possible to have a second device, that is good. Otherwise, you can just have the laptop or phone with you. The model exam question paper will be uploaded in Google Classroom, and you can download it. If you have a printer, you can take a printout, and then you can start writing the exam. So while you are writing the exam, there will be a teacher who is invigilating, and 10 of you at any given time will be on one Google Meet link. Okay, so the whole batch of class 10, 150 of you will be divided into 15 links, 10 of you in one link. And there will be one teacher who is proctoring and invigilating during that time. This is just to give you the practice in case we are assuming that your board exam also may be like this. We don't know. The council has not told anything. As far as the council has informed us, the first option is a physical exam in school. The second option is an online exam. The third option is probably they'll allow the school to conduct the exam. So we're not sure which of these will happen. So you should be prepared for all, right? And so the whole month of January, we're going to have these exams. Now, when you write each model exam, you get 15 minutes to read. That means 8:45, the exam will begin for you. The question paper will appear, and you should be on Google Meet link by 8:45. And then at 9 o'clock, you can start writing. So you must have sheets of paper available to you, and then you must have your pen and paper and all that ready. Don't go anywhere. Have your color pencils, have your scale and rubber and eraser and all of that ready. Okay, you cannot shift from your seat for those 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever it may be. And at the end, when the time is over, you will get 15 minutes to take clear pictures of your paper. Right? You must take clear pictures of your paper, put it in one PDF, and upload it to Google Classroom. And you would have done that earlier, I'm sure, so I know you're familiar. And the reason is this, that we are going to take printouts of those papers and send it to the teachers for correction. Okay, so the teachers are going to be correcting physical papers, and then they will, those papers will be scanned once more and uploaded so that you can actually see what are your mistakes, and you can go back to the teacher. You can have your explanations, etc., etc. All right. So this is how the model exam is going to be written. You must be careful, boys and girls. Make sure you answer every question. Don't leave out a single question unless there's a choice. Write something, even if you know very little about that, you write something so that at least basically some marks can be given. That is very important. Don't miss out a single question. Time yourself. Time yourself. If a question paper is 2 hours time, that means 120 minutes, and the marks are 80 minutes, you must actually divide, right? 120 minutes divided by 80 marks. What does it come to? How much is it? 120 by 80? No idea.
So I think it's
7.5.
7.5.
It's 1.5 minutes per mark. Okay, 1.5 minutes per mark. That means if it's a 5 mark question, right? If it's a 5 mark question, 7.5 minutes. If it's a 10 mark question, 15 minutes. So this is how you plan your time. And when you cross the time, stop, leave some space, and go to the next question. Okay, that is smart writing. You must stop when it reaches, it's a 10 mark question, 15 marks or 15 minutes are over, stop writing. Go to the, leave some space of how much you anticipate, go to the next question. Very important. So that you will complete the paper, and then when you have time, you can go back to the original question. Ideally, I would expect you to leave 20 minutes at the end of the paper to review your paper and make all the corrections and to maybe beautify the paper a little bit, put some lines and all, etc., so that it will look nice. The presentation will be good, right? And so remember to do all of that. Then, what else? Make sure that the picture you take is very clear, right? Very clear picture, and then only upload those pictures into the Google Classroom. You must upload in time so that we'll be able to mark your paper. Okay. The marks will take a little time, probably by the 10th of February. The teachers will be able to give out the marks, and you can review with them. That is number one. Okay. So, any further question about model exam?
So, I had a question about the timing in the beginning. So earlier you said that 8:45 we start our test and 15 minutes reading time. So about taking printouts of the paper, but how much time do we have for that? Considering that the paper only will be uploaded at 8:45.
Yeah.
Like,
See, if you have a printer, it will take you not more than 2 or 3 minutes, right? So
okay, so
that's why we are not giving too much time for that. It may not take you more than two. If you don't have a printer, just forget about it. No problem.
okay, thank you, sir.
You can view it on the screen. If you have the printer close by, keep everything ready, and within 2 minutes you can get a printout and start reading.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Make sure your connection is good, internet connection, and your camera should be on. Write neatly. Okay, write neatly, and as is the practice in Clarence School, you start with the answer you know the best, and then you can do other answers later. Okay, we'll have one more meeting like this where Mrs. Manoj will also speak to you, but I'm sure these will be very helpful information. That's number one. Number two is in the month of January and February, we're going to be having some practical classes. If the council agrees and if the government also agrees, so you all should be ready to come to school in batches, and we'll do a few experiments. Of course, I'm sure the teachers have been doing demonstrations, right? But if there is time, we will invite you to come to school and do a few experiments. So you must be ready for that with mask and hand sanitizer and gloves, and and we'll have small batches. Half the number that can come into a lab, we'll have only that many students coming in, and you can come and go back. Okay, so you'll have to be safe while you do that. Then third one is SUPW. This council has said that SUPW is mandatory, so you will be given a few projects that you can do at home. One of the projects is some posters or online videos about COVID-19, about the environment, etc., etc. You can do some work at home. There are some options there, and then you have to submit that, pictures of that or a report of that, and then we will mark you based on your SUPW based on that, so that there will be a grade on your marks card when you get it. Okay. Now, if the actual board exam is delayed because there is some rumor that it may be in April or May, something like that, we may have a second model exam just for your training. Okay. Now, from January onwards, there are no classes for you, right? I'm talking to ICSE class 10. For ICSE class 10, there will be no more classes. You will have you're free to write your model exam, to do your SFPW, to do your practicals. And then if the exam is delayed to April or May, we'll have a second model exam in the month of March. So that will give you a second practice on how to write the paper and to time yourself and to do all those things. Okay. So that is the plan as of now. I hope that is clear.
So there was a question on the chat. Anna had asked, "Sir, how should our camera be placed? Should the camera show our face or paper or both?"
Face, it should show your face. Okay. Um, and you can be at a little bit of a distance from the camera. It should not be too close. But of course, you need to read the question paper from the laptop. So normal distance is fine. Primarily, they should see your face. As far as possible, nobody else should interfere. Nobody else should come into the room. Okay, those 2 hours you dedicate and make it strict that you're in an exam and you should not be disturbed. Even if you're sitting in the living room, right? Please inform everybody I'm going through an exam, and please don't disturb. Okay, have your drinking water nearby. Make sure that whatever, to sit for a proper exam, whatever you need to do, make sure that your camera should be on. That is absolutely mandatory, right? Okay. So those are some instructions. Any questions about any other thing that comes to your mind? Okay. If there are no questions, then let me do a simple class. Now for CIC 10 and 12, CIC 10, you will not have a scripture class anymore. From January, you will have some other subject will be taken for you, and that will continue until you have your final exam. Okay. CIC 10 will have an assignment in Jan, and then you'll have regular classes after that. All right. I just want to share just a message of encouragement to you from the book of Daniel. As you are all young, you have a lot of opportunities and time that God is giving you, to start your lives. So I thought it is important for us to look at some lessons from the life of Daniel, which I've actually been teaching class 12. But these few lessons I thought would be applicable to you also. Daniel is actually not Yeah, so, sorry, somebody asked a question. How long do we have to submit the answers? You'll be given 15 minutes. 15 minutes at the end of the exam to take the picture and upload it. Scripture, you will have actually an assignment. I will upload an assignment for you because those marks will be featured in the model exam. So it's not an exam, but you will have to just write an assignment and submit it. Okay, but it's not there for the final board exam. But these marks will show in your model exam marks card. So it's important that you finish that. It will be a grade, so it's important that you finish that assignment and submit it. Okay. So as you know, Daniel was a person who was a young man in Judah, in Israel, but Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had come and had seized the capital, that is Jerusalem, and destroyed it, and he has taken away captive. Actually, Nebuchadnezzar did this 3 times to Jerusalem. This is the first time, this record in Daniel chapter 1 is the first time that Nebuchadnezzar came and he took away, and look at what it says. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, he came to Jerusalem, besieged it, okay, and the Lord gave Jehoiakim into his hand with some of the vessels of the house of God, and he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessel in the treasury of his God. Okay, so that's actually a very terrible scenario. When I was young, I was about 17 years old, and Saddam Hussein invaded invaded Kuwait. I was already here in India at that time, even though I was born and brought up in Kuwait. I had come back 2 years. But all my relatives were there, all my classmates of class 10 were still there in Kuwait at that time. And you can just imagine the horror of this army just coming and invading. And it was terrible. It was frightening. And they just let loose because actually this Iraqi army was starving and they had no money, no food. Saddam Hussein had no money to pay them actually. That is why actually he invaded Kuwait. And it was a horrible situation. On the streets, there was killing, shooting, there was rape. They would just walk into the houses of anybody, walk into any apartment, take whatever they want, stop cars on the street and just tell them, get out and take the car and go. That is the kind of thing. We heard of hospitals. They'd walk into the hospital, throw the baby out and take the incubator, because they have never seen such things in Kuwait. That is the kind of horror stories that came back to us during those days. So that's what an invasion is like, and imagine living through that. That is exactly what Daniel and his friends lived through, right? But when Daniel writes this story, he says, the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. That tells me, boys and girls, that Daniel believed in the sovereignty of God. That this is something that God allowed and orchestrated. That takes a lot of faith to actually believe something like that. To believe that God orchestrates even the difficult things of my life, even the bad things in my life. God has allowed it to happen so that He may train me. Why this happened in the life of the Israelites? Because they had sinned terribly against God. They were doing all sorts of evil in the land, all sorts of corruption, and they were living a horrible life far away from God. And God had kept on warning them, look, turn back, otherwise disaster is coming. Disaster is coming. And the disaster is a discipline of the Lord. But they refused to acknowledge. But when God did it, Daniel understood, yes, this is from the Lord. And this is for a time, because the prophets have told us. Daniel lived at the time of Jeremiah. He lived at the time of Isaiah. And these are the things that these prophets kept on prophesying. And there were so many prophets at the same time. And they kept on giving this message, and yet it was the people had rejected. And Daniel would have been, I would say, somewhere between 15 to 20 years old at this time. And you see the wisdom of Daniel. Very often you and I may look at our situation and circumstance and we may curse God, we may complain, grumble, have a very bitter spirit. That is the kind of attitude that you and I may have. That comes from a lack of faith and a lack of understanding that often it is God who allows these circumstances so that you may understand and come back to God. Right? God is speaking and He wants you to be listening. Okay, that was not my primary lesson. I wanted to point out this. Look at verse 3 and 4. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish and of good appearance, and skillful in wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. And the lesson I wanted to bring to you, dear boys and girls, is this. God gives you plenty of opportunity. The fact that you have reached this stage of your life and you've been able to complete class 10 is a great blessing. Okay, you may not realize it, but only when you actually go out into the world and see, what the situation is, you will realize. I'm sure some of you are able to realize. Yesterday I was talking to one of our board members and he was saying of another school, another PUC college, where they straight away told the children, if you're not paying the fees, just take the TC and leave. And these are boys and girls who are the children of daily wage workers, like the fruit vendor on the street, and that person has no money. 40,000 rupees is the fees. And that person has no money to pay, and he just told his daughter, it's okay, what else can we do? You just sit at home or you go for work. You can discontinue your education now because I don't have the money to pay. Straightforward. There's nothing more to do. And those girls were crying because they want to study, but there is no money. That is the kind of situation in the world today. Many, they drop out in class 5, in class 7, in class 9 or 10, whatever it may be. And the parents just don't have money to pay. Or the parents force them into labor because the parents need a salary, a second income, a third income in the house to manage. And they have to discontinue their studies. So I want to tell you, boys and girls, appreciate the opportunity that God has given you, number one. Number two, as you go on in life, more and more opportunities will come. The opportunity for studying in a good institution, college, to do your master's, to do your PhD, to apply for a job, to get a promotion. When the opportunity comes, are you in the right place, in the right position, in the right frame of mind, in the right health? Okay, are you taking care and making the necessary preparations to be chosen for that? Okay, I'll tell you why. Look at what it says here. What was the selection? Basically, the king wants the best. I want the best of the lot. Right? So he describes youths without blemish, good appearance, skillful in wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and so that I can teach them the literature and the language of the Chaldeans. So every college, every job opportunity, they're looking for a special skill set, right? I'm sure each of you have some dreams of what you want to become. You want to go into IT, want to become a doctor, want to become a lawyer, a nurse, an engineer, whatever it might be, and even in full-time ministry. If you want to serve God in full-time ministry, you want to be an evangelist or a pastor, whatever it may be, you must be the best in that field. I told you this when we talked about career, right? Why should the college pick you? Your appearance, your intelligence, your ability to speak, right? Your understanding of things. Look at what it says. Skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's place. When you are aiming for something, boys and girls, make sure that you do the necessary preparations. Some of these things are given to you. Appearance, perhaps you may not be able to do much about it, but there are things you can do. Right? There are things you can do. Looking neat and tidy, making sure you wear the right kind of clothes, your appearance, when you attend an interview, etc., etc. Certifications. What does it show on your certificate? Very important. All right. And these are opportunities that God is giving. You see, this opportunity was not available to the whole of Israel. The king had a very special set of people that he was looking for. It was not just thrown open and say anybody can apply. No, very special skill set. And you need to fit into that if you're aiming for that kind of a job. Okay, number 2. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or the wine that he drank. The second lesson I want to bring to you is making good choices. Making good choices. According to your faith, there are certain things you cannot do. And you must be ready, boys and girls, not to compromise no matter what. Because God is greater than your boss. And your faith is more important than anything that this world can give you. Right? It is not worth sacrificing your faith. I want to say that again. Be careful that you do not compromise on your faith. The temptation will come. The opportunities will come. Many people will say, what is there? Imagine even Daniel. I'm sure all the others who were part of the training would have said, what is there? Where will you get food like this? The king's food, the king's wine, which is the best in the land, is being given to you. But Daniel understood that this goes against my faith. Right? This particular kind of meat or these particular types of food, they go against my faith. I cannot eat it. And he just refused to compromise. There is no shame, no embarrassment, boys and girls, when you need to maintain your faith. Right? Don't be ashamed of it. And be sure that you make those decisions. Even when it comes to temptations. I've talked to you a lot about relationships, about romantic relationships, and the temptation will be, boys and girls, that there will be, the desire to have sex before marriage, the desire to commit fornication with others. There will be invitations, right, to do that. And it's up to you to decide whether it is okay for you to do that, right? Even when you're alone in the hostel, where nobody else can see, or when you're away from your parents, right? These temptations will be there. Each of you should be men and women who are disciplined, and you have specific choices to make, and you make those decisions. There is no shame in that. Absolutely no shame in standing up for what is right according to your faith. Okay? So that's number 2, the second lesson. Be ready to stand up for your faith. Okay, now look at verse 17, third lesson. As for these 4 youths, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Who gave them wisdom? God gave. It says that Daniel, they of course did their hard work, but it is God who gives us wisdom. Boys and girls, when you attempt an exam, when you sit to study, pray. Thanking God for the brain that He has given you, the ability to read, the ability to see, the ability to write. These are all good blessings from the Lord. But also trust God that, God, you give me the wisdom to understand these portions. Right? I'm sure all of you have one subject which you're terrible at. Right? Maybe a couple. I know for me, Hindi and chemistry, these were subjects that I just could not make head or tail of. But still I was able to pass with a distinction. Because, number one, we have to put in the effort, but at the same time, it is God who blesses you. And throughout your life, boys and girls, there will be subjects like that. Even if you go into the career path that you like, even if you take the course that you love and that you're good at, there will be certain subjects and certain topics which are hard. Right? Don't only choose the easy path. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. Work hard and trust God to give you that wisdom in your life. God gave them the wisdom, is what it says in verse 17. God gave them learning and skill. And you know why God did that? Because God wanted to raise Daniel and put him in a position of authority and influence in Nebuchadnezzar's life. And that is why God does that. God wants to raise you to that position, and He will give you the wisdom that is required for it. Look at verse 20. In every matter of wisdom, understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters that were in all his kingdom. Right? You know that magicians and enchanters are actually just making fool of us. Right? Most of the magic that you see is just tomfoolery. It's just, sleight of hand and, trickery of the eyes. The real other kind of magic, black magic, is actually demonic. Right? There is no such thing as good magic. The dark magic, right? The magic that cannot be explained is actually demonic. Right? And this kind of magic and enchanting, it cannot give you real wisdom. Cannot give you real wisdom. That is why the king, when he asked Daniel and his friends about all this, he found them to be 10 times better. 10 times better. And that should be your testimony also, boys and girls. That you should be at the top of your class. You should be an excellent student. Right? The teacher, the principal should be able to say, this boy, I can trust him to get it done. This girl, I know that when I give her something, she will make sure that she does. She always does an excellent job. Even the simple things, boys and girls, your record book, your practical record book, the answers you give, the assignment you submit, right? Put effort into it to improve your handwriting. I don't know if I told you the story. When I was in 7th and 8th standard, I had the worst handwriting possible. Terrible. It was really bad. And every year my teachers used to keep telling me, please do something about your handwriting. It's so bad. Right? Boys and girls, I worked very hard. And by my 10th standard, my handwriting was one of the best in the class. It's because I worked hard. It didn't suddenly happen. It didn't suddenly change. I worked hard. It took me almost a year or 2 years. But by the time I reached 10th standard, I had a good handwriting, right? If you want to change something, you need to put in the effort. You have to do what it takes. Take the hard work that is required. Show your teachers that you care about it, right? It pleases a teacher so much when she sees a neat paper, and something that is so well submitted. When a project or a record book is submitted well and in time, how glad the teacher is. You know that is the impression with which you must leave a school, right? So I wanted to encourage you with these lessons from the life of Daniel. I hope that you will be able to put these into practice. There is so much more that I would like to tell you, but there's no time for that. All right. Do you have any questions? Anything you want to say before we close for the day?
So I just had one general question, like not related to the passage that we did today.
Yes.
So in the Bible, in the Old Testament, why aren't the books placed in a chronological order? Like Job is placed in the middle of the Bible, and then there's, Ezra and Nehemiah coming way before, all the minor prophets. So I just wanted to know why it's not in a chronological
Yeah.
order.
So the placing of these books are, done with great intent. It is not random. If you look at the type of books through the Bible, you will see that it starts with historical. The Old Testament and the New Testament start with historical books. So the first 12 books of the Bible, from Genesis up to Esther, are historical books. Out of those historical books, sorry, not 12, 17 books. 17 books are historical. Out of that, the first 5 are the Pentateuch, Genesis to Deuteronomy, and then from um Joshua onwards, Joshua to Esther, the other historical books. Then you have Job to Ecclesiastes. These are poetical books because of the type of literature. Okay, Job to Ecclesiastes. And then you have Isaiah to Malachi, which are prophetical books. So that is how the Old Testament is divided. And history from Genesis to Esther. Okay, from Genesis to Esther, that is the history of the nation of Israel. Right? Esther was during the Medo-Persian Empire. Right? And Ezra, Nehemiah, and all that were before that. So uh, this is how the books of the Bible. So Esther is actually the last book after which the history ended. Right? Then you have Job to Ecclesiastes, which are poetical books, and then you have the prophetical books. In the New Testament, again, historical. Mathew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts. Up to Acts is historical. And then you have teaching, Romans to Jude. And the last book, Revelation, is prophetical. Right? So it's well thought out, actually.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you so much.
So I had a question with regard to again a question on the Bible. In the New Testament, like I was in Galatians chapter 2, and there, I mean, there's this chapter 2 verse 11 where it says that Paul and Peter were fighting, like, and verse 14 where he says that, I mean, you're not living like a Jew. How can you convince a Gentile? So, I mean, when I read that, it kind of makes me like, how can I believe like the gospel according to Mark or the First Peter and things like that? It was part of a circumcision party, and like, I mean, it's just confusing right now after reading that thing.
So Peter struggled with, I mean, what happened in the first century church was that there were these Jewish Christians who came in and started teaching that, okay, it's good that you became a Christian, but you also need to be circumcised, you also need to keep the Sabbath, you also need to do this. So those who heard it, they felt, okay, maybe there is some sense in what they are saying, right? And Peter was almost persuaded. So that incident that Paul is writing about is that when Peter came to visit Paul and to visit some Gentile Christians, right? He was eating their food and he was taking part in all that. But when some Jewish Christians came alongside, he began to withdraw. He got a little anxious. What will they think? What will they say? Right? His conscience was troubling him. Is what I'm doing right? So that is when Paul rebuked him. Paul rebuked him and said, "You're showing double standards." Right? So that was just a momentary conflict that they had between Paul and Peter. Right? Of course, you see, later on, Peter would have understood his mistake. Right? And he would have turned to the correct path. But it happened in that moment. It was a historical moment when it happened that Peter kind of showed a double standard. And Paul openly rebuked him for doing that. That's all.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, our time is up. Let me wish you all the best, boys and girls. God bless you. Please do reach out by email or phone if you have any doubts, anything you want to ask. We are always here. If you're stressed out, you just want to talk, you're welcome to call. I'm always available, and Mrs. Manoj, and we are happy to help you. Okay, we'll keep you updated as and when we get information from the council. God bless you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.